Right now on Upfront.
Senate showdown.
We all got to wake up and we all got to get involved in this fight.
Republicans today wrapping up their state convention in Appleton.
Please send him to the Senate as my colleague.
Party platforms, endorsements, all ahead of November. Now, our new interview one-on-one with Republican U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde.
So how do you win in November?
Running to unseat Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin. The issues, the election, and Trump all ahead.
Politics and religion.
I'm Democrat, I'm not Republican, I'm Catholic.
Less than 6 months out, Archbishop Jerome Listecki officially submitting his retirement letter. Now with us, looking ahead, the elections, the hot issues, and the church's role. Is there a candidate for Catholics?
Restoring trust.
And most have been proven false.
The group attempting to boost confidence in Wisconsin's elections, meeting the skeptics.
This was useless.
Kathy Bernier, the former Republican state senator, on what's next.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. State Republicans wrapping up their state convention in Appleton today. The state party holding its annual event now less than 6 months out from Election Day and 2 months ahead of the Republican National Convention in July. Republicans hearing from state and congressional delegations and also officially endorsing Republican Eric Hovde in the race for U.S. Senate. The Republican businessman running to unseat Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin.
The latest polling out this past week from the New York Times and Siena College showing Baldwin up by 7 among likely voters. Marquette's most recent poll last month showing a tie, 50-50 among likely voters as well. With control of the Senate at stake, Eric Hovde, who officially launched his bid several months ago, joins us now. Eric, welcome back to Upfront. Good to see you. Thanks for your time today.
It's great being on your show this morning.
You loaned your campaign $8 million during the first quarter of 2024. Senator Baldwin had double that amount of cash on hand from donors. Is there a scenario where at the end of this you will have spent more than $20 million of your own money?
I don't know how much money I'll spend. Obviously, I'm looking to raise money. Now, I'm not taking corporate special interest money like Senator Baldwin is. I'm trying to raise money by individuals. Yeah, I mean, these Senate campaigns, honestly, it's kind of sickening how much money it costs to run for these federal and statewide offices. I think there's just too much money in the system. It just forever continues to increase. Just like we have inflation impacting all aspects of society, it's impacted the cost of running these campaigns.
Let's talk about some of the issues that you're going to face on the campaign trail, including abortion. You recently said that women early on in pregnancy should have a right to make a choice. I'm curious, what is your line on that?
Yeah, look, first of all, it's been put back to the states. So I think the best way to resolve this, because it's been too contentious of an issue. I think we have to find a compassionate, common sense solution to bring our state together on this issue. I believe it should go to a referendum, so every voter should have a right to vote on it. And I'll have my vote, everybody else will have their vote. I believe in the beauty of life. I have 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren. But I also believe in exceptions for rape, incest, and the health of the mother. And I think early on in a woman's pregnancy, she should have a right to choose. If you look at most of Western Europe, they resolved this decades ago. I mean, I think Germany's at 12 weeks, France is at 14 weeks. Almost all of Western Europe allows a woman the right to choose in the first trimester. But there becomes a point when a baby can be born healthy and alive that I'm opposed to having an abortion.
Is your number at 12 or 15 weeks, or are you going to reveal that to voters?
I'm not going to, because I believe everybody should have their vote. I think somewhere in that time range is probably a reasonable time range. As I said, that's where most of Western Europe, it gives a woman who's facing that difficult decision time to contemplate, think about it, and all the rest.
There is a scenario where legislation could be brought to the floor of the Senate if you're elected that could propose a national ban, let's say 12, 15 weeks. Would you vote for that?
I think it's been sent back to the states. I think people should have a right to vote on it.
Some lawmakers Senator Graham, for example, want this to be figured out at the national level.
Yeah, I don't think everything should be figured out at the national level because certain states may have more restrictions. Certain states may have a more open view and from a standpoint of giving a bit more time. So again, I'm dealing with reality. Senator Graham, I understand his proposal, and I respect his proposal, but the reality of it is it's been too contentious. It's been put back to the states, and the reality of it is the Senate will never come to agreement on it. You're going to need 60 votes. You're going to need the presidency, a majority of the Senate, and the House to all vote to get something at a federal level. So a lot of states are taking this up and resolving this by themselves. And I think we, the people of the state of Wisconsin, can resolve this through a referendum.
I want to ask about immigration. You talked a lot about immigration while launching your campaign. Do you support the bipartisan bill that recently made an attempt to pass through Congress?
I think that bill was a total joke. There were so many flaws in that bill, and all it did was give more rights to President Biden, and President Biden has all the tools to stop the open border policy. Let's be very clear. The last year of President Trump's administration, about 300,000 border crossings occurred. He used Stay in Mexico, Title 42, Section 8, all these different tools. President Biden eliminated every single one of them.
This deal would have provided $8 billion in emergency funding, tried to speed up the asylum process, border shutdowns, daily crossings, 5,000. Democrats may try to bring this up again before November. There are Republicans who say this is at least a good first step, this deal.
I would like to see a real step that really addresses the problems on our southern border. Again, you can't argue with facts. Let's get away from the political talking points. We were down to 300,000 border crossings. Under Joe Biden, the minimum estimate is 10 million, as high as potentially 16 million. And some sheriffs in the southern border will tell you, we really don't know, because they are just pouring across it and it's really hard to estimate. So if we're going to do something, let's not put lipstick on a pig. Let's deal with the real issues. And if you're just transferring more power to President Biden to decide how he wants to implement it, well, we've already seen what he's done, and that is pretty much open our southern border and let anybody come in.
Let's talk about the election. Looking ahead to November, Trump endorsed you in Green Bay. In Waukesha earlier this month, he said, "I will secure our elections. Our goal will be one-day voting and paper ballots." Do you agree with that?
Look, early voting is here. And, you know, the Democrats have been using early voting very aggressively for the last few election cycles. Some people can't show up on Election Day. I prefer to show up on Election Day when I can, but I've always traveled extensively for my different businesses. So I don't have a problem with a certain level of mail-in voting or early voting.
Will you accept the results of your election in November?
Yes. I will.
Should the president do the same for his?
I think everybody should. Look, I love how this has been framed recently, that this is just a Republican issue. Let's not forget, in 2016, Hillary Clinton said the election was stolen. Russian interference. It caused a 2.5-year investigation of, what was it, $110 million of claiming that the Russians stole the election. People seem to forget about that. And yet they found no evidence of that. After all of that, it was very disruptive to President Trump's presidency, this ongoing investigation. So I think we need to come together. We need to tighten up our voting process so everybody agrees and feels confidence in our voting. Because we can't, you know, I've been talking about it. We can't just be in the red camp and the blue camp, and every time an election goes against you, claims the other one, you know, fraud or whatever. Yeah, are there voting problems in our state? Sure. But, you know, let's try to get everybody in agreement. Let's clean up our voting system, our voting rolls as much as possible, so we can move forward and have confidence in the election.
Would you have voted to certify the results in 2020 if you were in Congress?
You know, I'm not here talking about 2020. Yes, I probably would have, but I'm here to run in 24. I know, you know, y'all want to talk about the past.
President Trump keeps talking about it.
Well, I'm running for the U.S. Senate in 2024, and I'll tell you, what people are talking about? They're not talking about the 2020 election. You know what they're talking about? Inflation, how it's crushing them. Real wages have gone down over the last 3.5 years. We are in such a precarious economic position today. We have $35 trillion in debt. We have racked up more debt in the last 3.5 years than our country's first 230 years. So we've not only gone through the worst bout of inflation of the last 40 years, but because they continue to spend, we're adding another $1 trillion of debt every 4 to 5 months. Do you know how dangerous that is? We're entering into a massive debt trap.
Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden both agreed to debate, 2 debates this past week. Will you commit to a debate with Senator Baldwin?
I would love to debate Senator Baldwin. Could you please try to arrange one?
We will.
Yes. Is that your agreement here? Do it right here.
I'll do it right here. I'll do it any place, anywhere. I have many groups have tried to reach out to her or organize a debate with Senator Baldwin, and she doesn't respond. So I would love to debate Senator Baldwin because I think that's what the people of the state should hear. What are our positions? All she wants to engage is the politics of personal destruction. Nonsense. I'm from California. I've never lived in California 1 year in my life. I've never been a resident of California. I'm a 4th-generation Wisconsin. That's what she wants to talk about. She doesn't want to talk about her record because she has nothing to run on. So I would love to debate Senator Baldwin, so please try to arrange that.
It's going to be a fascinating road ahead. We hope to have you back, Republican U.S. Senate candidate Eric Hovde. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Up next, politics and religion, the Sunday conversation with Archbishop Jerome Listecki, the hot issues, the role of the church, and his retirement now sent to the Pope. We're one-on-one next.